Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbaugh.
Contributing to the annual $150 billion loss in training and development investments is downright demoralizing. So raise your spirits in training ROI by increasing learning transfer with ResultPal. Get over the hump now by going to resultpal.com/fast and getting a $750 performance package for free. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, make sure you share this episode because it's going to be fun. I have somebody today who is both witty and full of wisdom. From an early age, Jack Mackey had a pathological aversion to authority. Think James Bond, his childhood hero, minus the tough guy looks and luxury lifestyle. He might have some of Bond's independent streak and initiative, though. Most folks like their bios to flatter them, but Jack learned it's best to lower expectations. That way, when you learn he's taken on a second marriage or a job turning around a failing operation or starting a new business, you sort of expect him to fail, and he may surprise you. Jack's failures and successes all taught him the same lesson. The human condition is to struggle. Once you accept that, he says, the key to happiness is to love the battle. Jack is currently the Chief Evangelist and Vice President of Sales at Service Management Group, also known as SMG, which is a top 50 market research firm in the U.S. with offices in London and Tokyo that Jack was instrumental in launching. When he joined the company, SMG had 38 clients and $8 million in revenues. Under his sales leadership, the company has grown to $50 million in revenues and serves more than 325 brands around the world, from Shell Oil to McDonald's to Kroger to JCPenney. Prior to Jack's life in sales, he founded and operated 4 restaurants, was a teacher and student of Taekwondo for 20 years. From that experience, Jack developed Love the Battle as the most powerful concept for business owners and managers to excel under adversity. Jack currently resides in Kansas City with his wife, Betsy. Jack, Mackey, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am halfway over the hump already, man.
I hear you. All right, so I've given our Legion a little bit about you, but can you share what your current passion is so that we can get to know you better?
Well, my current passion. My current passion is I am training for a triathlon to celebrate my 65th birthday. I know I can't stave off death, but I'll be damned if I'll go out with a whimper. And my passion at work is, as you know, Jim, we've met, I'm just passionate about creating 5-star experiences for people, whether they're customers or employees, or, hey, how about even my family, my wife and kids and the people I work with?
You know, I think that's a great point, Jack. And that's one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to have you on my show, is that you're one of those folks that, you seem like you're always there for people. I mean, even when we've had just casual passings at, a member inside exchange for the CXPA, or, even being on a leader call, we're being both the CX leaders for the association, is that you take the time and you listen well, and you know what? You give some darn good advice, and that's really appreciated. And doing it both for the business side as well as your family is something that I think we really need to kind of separate the line between the two. I mean, I think you've probably emulated that in a lot of ways, even though I haven't seen the family side. I just kind of know it's there. Where does that come from?
So I think I've got to say that comes from my parents. I have an unusual heritage. My mom was a frustrated actress and my dad was a lawyer, but he found out he didn't like the confrontational side of law. So he ended up using his talents in real estate appraisal. But both of my parents were great hosts and entertainers, and people would love to come to the parties at our house. And so I was exposed at an early age to what it was like to make people feel welcome and comfortable, and to greet people, and to go to some effort to listen to them and remember their names and what they cared about. My parents were just masters at that.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I know you and I have had several discussions around hospitality and restaurants, and you had a long history in that. Even as an executive chef, I think you were for a while. And so we've had some, good discussions about that. But do you think that even that influenced you, that being with them and seeing all of that, to go into the restaurant space?
I was totally fell in love with the craft of cooking. That's how I got there. Once I got into the restaurant business, it really helped. I loved food. I discovered it kind of late in life because even though my parents were great entertainers, they weren't great cooks. So when the first time I was exposed to great cooking, it was like an epiphany. I fell in love with it. And back in those days too, Jim, this was in the 70s. And being a cook, there was no such thing as a celebrity chef. Being a cook was a big no in my family. Like it was like, I think the Department of Labor classified cooks along with sort of maids and household staff. So it was a very low esteemed job in the viewpoint of all my peers. And when I fell in love with cooking, they were shocked. My friends, my parents, everybody was. But my attitude was, you know what? If I go and learn to do this and it turns out that this isn't the way I want to make my living, how can I go wrong? I'm going to be a great cook for the rest of my life. And that's worked out so well. And of course, I don't cook for a living, but boy, I've never regretted getting into that. But I think I got off track of your question, which was sort of how did this attitude towards people kind of get into me, and how did it influence my restaurant industry? And I think what it was in a way, I saw some negative examples in the kitchens, the behind the scenes stuff. There's a lot of stereotypes about chefs throwing things and cussing and things. That a lot of that was true back in the 70s. And sometimes you learn the best lessons from the worst examples, and you say to yourself, I'm never going to be that way. And as a result of that, then you go all the way in the opposite way, so that you actually become not a bad example, but maybe you become a little bit of an exemplar about how it should be done, the way you should talk to people. And I like a great example of that, Jim, is when wait staff would come back to the kitchen, they would order something and the customer had said they wanted something special about it, no salt or extra this or whatever. And a lot of times the cooks that saw themselves as artists would get almost offended, and they'd take it out on the servers that the customer wanted something special. So I had to intervene all the time and set the example that, we were here for what the customers wanted. The servers were simply communicating what the customers wanted. And it was very important to me that we made the customers happy. And in the process, we're very respectful of the servers who requested these unusual things.
But I think what you're talking about are some really, and we were on a call yesterday with the CXPA as part of the leader group. And, I think we all started talking about fundamentals. I mean, what you're talking about is very fundamental in regards to being able to deliver a customer experience that will render prosperity. I mean, it just makes a lot of things easier, and they flow much better when you actually reduce that whole need to create conflict. And I think that's, a great example that you just shared right there about that whole transformation of what has occurred within the kitchen. Now, I know for you, talking about even your parents' influence and just interacting with you, that, you do find things that are very inspirational and you share them quite often. You're a great storyteller. And on the show, we focus on quotes because they do just that. They can inspire and tell great stories in oftentimes just a few words. Is there a quote for you that kind of stands out as one that has that depth and meaning and gives you drive?
Yes, I learned it at an early age with a fellow who was interviewing with me. And he was telling me about his career, and I asked him what the best advice he had ever gotten was. And he said, if it can't be done, it interests me. If it can't be done, it interests me. And I have used that over and over again in my career as a way of challenging salespeople, challenging leaders, and even in volunteer organizations when I wanted people to do things beyond what had been accomplished in the past. In fact, I used to use it as a byline under my name for a while. If it can't be done, it interests me. And I think there's a lot to that because it really speaks to this idea of loving the battle. You've got to embrace challenges. And in fact, I bet everybody or a lot of people have seen that poster of Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston in that first round knockout. And it basically said, nothing is impossible. And then there was this great copy about how impossible is just a big word for small-minded men that think more about the problems they face than how to change the world that's been given to them. And at the end of the quote, it turns around to from nothing is impossible to impossible is nothing.
Oh, that's some great wisdom there, Jack. I know that when you start talking about, looking at things that are supposedly impossible, and it does actually have interest, is that when we go down the path to pursue those things, that we have humps to get over. And there's so many different learnings that we can have within those humps, because there's failures, there's wisdom that we capture for others. I mean, can you think of a hump that you had to get over that, added to you and to others?
Well, first of all, just a comment about failures. I was with a group of people once where somebody started the conversation and said, "So everybody's always talking about their biggest successes. Tell me about your biggest failure." And everybody was dead silent. About 10 things came to my mind. I said, I could dominate this whole conversation. My life is littered with failures. And I think if you're going to have a career that is challenging at all, it's going to be checked with disappointments and failures and even the occasional humiliation. And I like what you said the other day. You just have to get back up. It's no disgrace to fail or make a mistake or lose. In fact, it's going to happen. And the balance is not to accept losing, but to understand when you're unable to succeed in spite of your best efforts. If you gave it your best effort, you can't turn on yourself and beat yourself up. You got to get up and get back in the ring, as you would say. Absolutely.
I mean, one of the sayings that I like is, until you're dead, you're not done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me, that's the ultimate, losing, so to speak. For those of us that are of faith, I mean, we know that's not the end either. So you always have a chance to get back up.
Oh, so true. But back to your question. Yeah, I wanted to think of a story that involved me in a leadership role, because there's been lots of personal challenges, but that's a little bit of a different set of skills to overcome personal challenges. In a leadership situation, I'll never forget, I was a member of a group called Toastmasters. In fact, I still am a member, and I founded a club here at SMG. I've been a member for a long time. I love public speaking. And I also like seeing people gain the confidence that comes with not just speaking in public, but leading. And so in the Toastmasters organization, I ended up becoming the district governor out here in my part of the country. And one of the things we do is put on an annual conference. And that takes lots of volunteers, and you've got to get people to volunteer and to volunteer to do things outside their comfort zone. And I especially made it a challenge for everybody, because the history in my district was we never got more than 100 people to come to the conference, no matter what we did. There was 1,800 people get invited and 100 would come. And that was a lot of work for 100 people. So I went to a national or a regional conference of other district leaders. And I heard about this one outfit up in Wisconsin, and they got 300 people to come to their conference. And they did it by having the individual clubs pay one small fee, and anybody, as many people as were in the club, could attend, versus having the individual members have to pony up extra money beyond their dues. And I thought that was brilliant. So I challenged everybody. We're going to have 300 people come to our conference. If it can't be done, it interests me. That's how I introduced it. And so a lot of people were skeptical. But one fellow in particular was in my eyesight as a guy who would be a great organizer of the event in terms of the planning. Like, I would handle the marketing, but I need somebody that I could really rely on in the planning and execution, make sure the rooms were set up. And, 300 people is a big organizing challenge. And this guy's name was Charlie Frost. I'm sure Charlie Frost won't mind me using his name. So Charlie and I went out one Saturday morning, and our challenge was we had to first of all go and vet a couple hotels and figure out which one we would choose. And Charlie picked me up, and first thing he said when I got in the car, he says, "Jack," he said, the more I think about this, he said, I just don't think I'm going to be able to do this. And I said, "Well, good morning to you too, Charlie. Thanks for picking me up." I said, "Okay, I get it. You're a little bit nervous. I was scared to death the first time I did this. As long as we're up and we're out, let's go ahead and go off to one of these hotels and just see what happens." So he tells the story that I just acted like I didn't hear him say, "I quit before I start." So we went out to one of the hotels, and once he got in there and we started talking to the meeting planner, and she took us into the room and saw the layout, he was very detail oriented. When he starts to talk about the details, he starts to organize them. He got that. And by the end of our visiting 3 hotels, there was no talk about how he couldn't do it or anything. And that was the most successful conference we ever had. And I've been so proud of that. And so proud of him. It just shows that sometimes adversity or fear brings the best out in you. And I think that was the case for Charlie. I know it's happened for me.
I think there's another thing for me that kind of stood out as you were saying that. And it wasn't necessarily ignoring what Charlie was saying. It was more so that you chunked it down for him. And then you made it something that he didn't have to feel like he was drinking from a fire hose. It was something that he felt that he could take as one little incremental step at a time. And then throughout the course of the day, as you were saying, he was pulling and putting all of the other minor pieces together to make a major outcome. I think that was fantastic.
Yeah. It's kind of like swimming lessons. You don't throw somebody in and ask them to swim the length of the pool. You stand in the pool and just ask them to take your hand or put their foot in the water. That's sometimes, in that case, that was a good leadership lesson for me.
Well, I think that's a good leadership lesson for all of us, because I think too many times, especially in today's world where we just have so many things that we need to get done, that we often don't slow down in order to get more accomplished.
I agree with you, Jim. I also think that one of the requirements to be an effective leader is you not only have to believe in whatever it is you're leading, you actually have to believe in the people that are on your team. So the fact that I picked Charlie, I handpicked him. I believed he could do it. I was ready to trust my reputation with him. I felt that way. So when he didn't feel that way, I think it was my belief that helped reset his belief about what he could do. And I think people rise to the level of expectations of the leader. That's not a new idea. That's an old idea. And the reason it's old is it sticks around because it's true.
Very much so. Very much so. Okay. So if you started thinking about the experiences that you've had, not just as a leader, but also as a follower, because I don't also see a situation, Jack, where, you're the person who has to grab the limelight. I don't see that. I mean, you actually fall, in with the group to help carry the group as a group member, just as much as you are comfortable with standing in front and, leading the way. So if you were to think about all of those experiences, if there was one piece of advice you'd give to the Legion, what would it be?
I think if it was advice about leadership, it would be, it's not about you. It took me a while to come to that perspective because in my first career, I was the typical leader in as much as I actually did know more about the topic than anyone else that worked for me. In fact, they came to work for me because they wanted to learn from me. And then when I changed and evolved my career into the areas that I've been in since, which has been management training and consulting and customer experience, management and leadership. Well, once I got into that, there was people there that knew a lot more than I did about a lot of different areas. So this is where I've found that leadership needs to be much more collegial now because no one is looking to you for all the answers. In fact, a lot of times the best thing you add is asking the right questions. And as you said, not insisting that you step in the limelight or that it always be your answer. So I learned that over time. That wasn't, it's not like I've been that way my whole life. I've just, like you, like everybody, we all have to evolve. And if you've ever been in a job where you actually were the smartest, fastest, most knowledgeable in that area, and people look to you for leadership, that is a whole different kind of leadership than where you're on a cross-functional team with a whole bunch of people with advanced degrees in areas that know 10 times more than you in those specific areas, and you have to pull them all together to deliver a result. Yeah, you need to find a way to make people want to work together. And I think you get that by respecting them, listening to them, and a lot of times that means asking good questions.
Well, thanks for sharing that wisdom. Now, I know, we talked about a lot of different things that you have going on. I mean, everything from your volunteer work to your actual work, and being in that serial entrepreneur in regards to that type of energy, and as well as some of the creative things that we're talking about. But if you were to think about one thing right now that kind of gives you that energy and excitement, what is it? Gosh,
I feel like I'm 21 years old from an emotional point of view. I don't know where that comes from, but Jim, I think I mentioned I'm turning 65. And so all my peers are that age too. And all of us, whenever we get together for reunions or anything, everybody just says, the mind does not feel old. The body feels sometimes old, but the mind does not feel old. So I'm blessed that there isn't any secret that I've discovered. It's sort of it feels like it's in my DNA, but I don't feel like it's exclusive to Jack Mackey because everybody else I talk to that's my age sort of still feels young. So I think now to keep that young feeling when you're, in a career situation where it's it's not just a passion. People are relying on you. So they need you to be energetic and focused and committed. And what continues to turn me on is I always find new things to try to learn and get better at. I guess that's the key. Do you remember when you had your first job or a first job in a new career? You think back on those days when you're first starting a job and you are learning so much so quickly that you can almost feel your mind expanding and you can almost feel yourself getting better. It's just a matter of weeks and months of this massive growth. And when you think back about how great it feels early on in a job like that, that is really what I try to recapture by taking on new challenges all the time and trying to learn new things and throw myself into situations where sometimes I'm actually nervous and scared. I try not to show that because it makes my teammates nervous. But sometimes if I'm not nervous or scared for a couple of weeks, I just don't feel like I'm challenging myself enough.
Well, and the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. A dry leadership pipeline shouldn't clog your business from moving onward and upward. Get over the hump by filling the gap between leadership development and top performance with ResultPal. Rocket to success by going to resultpal.com/fast and getting a $750 performance package for free. All right, now, here we go, Fast Leader listeners. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Jack, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Jack Mackey, are you ready to hoedown?
I'll give it a shot, man. If it can't be done, it interests me.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I don't have the energy of a 21-year-old.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Take people with you.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Start what you finish. Put things back in the same place. Stay organized. Just basic, simple stuff. Don't get in front of in your own way,
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
I just learned this tool 3 years ago. It's called the Seinfeld Strategy. Want to hear it?
Yes, we do.
All right. The Seinfeld Strategy was somebody asked Jerry Seinfeld, how did he make $1 billion being a funny man? And he said the only way to tell better jokes is to write better jokes. And the only way to write better jokes is to write a lot of them. So he said, I made a commitment that every day I was going to write jokes, whether they were good, bad, ugly. That was a secondary thing. I was going to write jokes every day. So I got myself a big yearly calendar. And every day that I wrote jokes for an hour, I put an X on the calendar. And my challenge was to not break that chain of X's. And he said that strategy of committing to a daily activity that would cumulatively get you where you wanted to go and not breaking the chain was the best reason why he is so successful. Ever since I heard that, I always used a calendar, but I never used the X on each day to give myself a pat on the back for that activity. So I love that strategy.
Good strategy. What would be one book you would recommend to our listeners?
Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by a guy named Richard Rumelt. He's a UCLA professor of strategy. Strategy is such a highfalutin word. Everybody uses big multisyllabic words to discuss it. God, he was really good at boiling it down. So that's the one I'd recommend for your leadership. But just for fun, I listen to audiobooks all the time. You got to listen to The Big Short by Michael Lewis, who also did Moneyball. That explains the whole financial crisis that we just went through, again, in a story format. Fantastic audiobook.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from our show by going to the show notes page for Jack. And you'll find that at fastleader.net/Jack Mackey. Okay, Jack, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you have been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what one piece of skill or knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I would have never guessed, and therefore I would have taken this back with me. I would have never guessed when I was a young man that keyboard skills would matter so much. So I passed up the opportunity in high school, in college. I never, ever got good at typing because I never thought typing was going to matter. And now Well, Jim, now everybody needs to communicate and you're constantly typing. They don't call it that anymore. So if I could do it all over again, I would go back. I would learn to type 120 or 30 words a minute. And that would have advanced my career a lot faster.
Whew, I think I'm right there with you. Jack, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Oh, I'd love to. I'm on LinkedIn as Jack Mackey. Easy to find. And you can reach me at SMG at jmackey@smg.com. And my Twitter handle is jmackey5000.
Jack Mackey, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.